Hello, and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers with whatever writing ailments you might have.
Whether it's related to your craft or your career, we can help.
Are you ready for your session?
The doctors are in.
So today we have author and screenwriter Tim Gabrielle. He's the author of the horror novels This Land of Monsters and The 18th. He's out in Canada, actually, on the other side of the continent from us. He's in Ontario. So welcome, Tim.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Welcome to Horror April month. I don't know what we're doing. We have all these horror things going on this month. So let's talk about your books, first of all.
All right.
How did you get into horror writing, and tell us about your books and all that good stuff?
Yeah. I've always been a fan of horror writing and movies. I was born in the 80s, so I grew up with all those Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees. I mean, I watched them after the fact, obviously being born in the 80s, but Stephen King is a big influence of mine. I'm sitting at my desk. I have all of his books behind me on my bookcase. So Stephen King is probably the main fuel for my horror fire, I would say.
What did people do before Stephen King, right?
I don't know. Mary Shelley.
Is that why you moved to Canada, to get that kind of more like that Maine feel?
Oh, yes. It's as close to Maine as I can get, yeah.
So now I understand you've got two horror books out. Are they sequels of each other, Land of Monsters and The 18th?
Technically speaking, yes, but only because I included one of the antagonists from This Land of Monsters in the 18th as a very blink and you'll miss it character. But so technically speaking, the 18th is a prequel to This Land of Monsters, but story-wise, they're completely separate.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I understand we've had conversations off podcast. I understand one of them was traditionally published and one of them was self-published, correct?
Yeah, This Land of Monsters was traditionally published with Inksmith Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And the 18th I self-published in 2019.
Can you talk us through the process of what it was like to be going through a traditional publisher and then pivoting to self-publishing, and what was the thought process behind that?
Mm-hmm. Well, self-publishing, it has a lot more freedom involved. I mean, realistically, I don't advise this, but you don't even need an editor if you want to self-publish. You can edit it yourself. You can create your own cover. You can put it on Amazon, and away you go. Whereas traditional publishing, there's a lot more back and forth with your cover designer, your editor. It's the freedom is really what comes down to self-publishing. A lot of people are doing that these days. It's become a lot more popular.
Yeah, I was going to say, most people go the other way. They start by self-publishing, and then they get a publisher that helps them get more exposure and that kind of thing. But you felt like you could do it better yourself?
Not that I could do it better. It's funny because my first publisher I got connected with through Twitter, through a Twitter pitch party. So for anybody that's looking to sell their book or to get an agent, that's a good way to go about that to start off. Is usually for about 12 hours on Twitter, you can pitch your book every hour or so. Then agents and publishers, they will look through all the tweets with the hashtag, and they'll like pitches that they want to hear more about. So that's how I got connected with my first publisher. Unfortunately, they started the edit. They created the cover for This Land of Monsters, which is actually the original cover with my first press. It's the same one I used for my current press. But long story short, my first publisher folded before they even published a single book.
Ooh, yeah. Ouch.
And they were brand new. I mean, that's one of the dangers you have by going with a new publisher. They were brand new, the enthusiasm was there, and then it just fizzled out, and she closed the doors. But I kind of wallowed in my own self-pity for a little while, and then I got up and started looking around, and actually my current publisher, Inksmith Publishing, I found them. I just sent them a query letter out of the blue, and they accepted the book. So that was 3 or 4 years ago. 2018 is when it was.
Cool. Yeah. Now, the two books that you have out there, This Land of Monsters and The 18th, are kind of different in subject matter. The The 18th is basically a zombie monster. No, which one? This Land of Monsters is the zombie kind of monster kind of story, whereas the 18th is more of a thriller murder
Mhm.
murder story.
Correct.
Why do you have different? Why that seems kind of like two different genres to me, subgenres to me. And most people usually kind of stick to one area, but you seem to have an interest in more than just that. So talk about how you come up with your ideas and why you kind of have different areas you go into.
My initial plan was I wanted to write a book in every major horror trope. So zombies was my first one, and then I went to serial killers. I still want to write like aliens, ghosts, uh, what have you. Any of the vampires. That was always just kind of my idea of just having a collection of books that dealt with every major horror theme. This Land of Monsters was kind of always in my head for years. Same thing with the 18th. They were just two that I always just, even when I wasn't writing back in the day, because I didn't really start writing seriously until I turned 30. And prior to that, I was always thinking about stuff, like constructing stories in my head, but I never had anything down on paper. And this Land of Monsters and the 18th were always there.
Cool. Now you're switching from writing books to writing a screenplay. Which one are you adapting?
I adapted the 18th,
Okay,
which
and what was that process like? I've done an adaptation, so I know it's kind of tricky. I didn't adapt my own book though. How was that for you trying to write your own book as a screenplay?
it was hard at first. It was difficult because I've been fortunate enough along the way in regards to people I've met that have really been helpful with teaching me and guiding me on how to screenplay. Um, it was my initial when I was first done the first draft and what I thought was complete of the 18th screenplay. It was 130 pages,
Oh my
which
gosh.
Yeah,
I know,
Wow.
that's a
I
really
know.
long one. Yeah.
I know. And the guy that was helping me out, he was telling me "Look, it's too long, and me, I'm just stubborn, and I'm like, nah, it'll be fine. And so of course I finally was like, you know what, you know more than I do in this. You're the wise one here. So I eventually chopped it down to 113 pages, that's where it sits now, which for horror, to my
That's
understanding,
okay.
is I've heard it's still a little on the long side, but I couldn't cut anymore. And that's what was hard as the initial writer, like the novelist. I had already cut so much, and there was literally nothing else I could cut out that would make the story better. So that was what was hard was, they say kill your darling. So I was chopping up my story left and right, trying to make it fit in that guide.
When you were adapting, did you find that you had to rewrite complete scenes or anything like that? I mean, putting on a producer hat now, were you like, "Oh, I can't do that. That's too expensive," or "That's too many people," or "That wouldn't," "He's monologuing in the book, and I can't do that on screen." Did you find that you had to change a lot of stuff?
Um, Certain characters I had to move around in the story, like they show up a little bit early so that they don't just magically appear when it's convenient. Um, there was a couple of sequences that I just had to straight out cut, but rewriting wise, the story is very similar to the book. There wasn't a lot that I had to rewrite. Even dialogue, I found a lot of my dialogue I lifted right from the book straight to the screenplay.
Did you? Yeah. So you had to cut out a lot of things that you loved about the story. Were there characters you had to remove at all? Did you find yourself doing that? Because I've had to do that where I'm like, well, this character just doesn't work on screen, or I have to combine characters.
I didn't have to remove anybody, but certain characters got less screen time or less writing time rather. Um, so the crux, like the main storyline of the book is um, the soul of an executed serial killer bonds with this like AI that's being used as like a video game. So what it is these 8 people would plug into this game like Matrix style, and once you're inside, you're on an island, and it's um, basically like survival horror. Last one to survive wins. So once the characters get in there, they realize that there's a So long story short, the girl that was the sole survivor of the serial killer's murder spree, she gets paid an exorbitant amount of money to participate in the first run of this game. And when she gets in there, she realizes that the soul of that guy is attached to the AI, and they're all suddenly booted out of the game. And what happens in the real life is the soul of the killer followed them out of the game, and he can jump between the different bodies of the people that were participating.
Oh,
So
cool.
some of the characters that had more in the book are kind of not in the book as long, we'll say, because I couldn't devote the same amount of time that I would
It
in
is
a
a horror
novel.
movie. Someone's gonna die.
Somebody's
So
gonna die.
yeah,
There's no secret there. Yeah.
yeah, someone's gonna die. So
Yeah.
you're gonna start trimming down the cast quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So you haven't produced anything, right? You've never
No,
produced a film.
I have not.
We've talked about when you're writing a screenplay, you have to think like a producer because about budget. Did you take a budget into account when you were writing your screenplay?
No, but I know that some of the things I cut um, would definitely help a budget. Because this kind of goes back to the other question about like what I had to cut and what I didn't. There's a certain sequence in the book where they all go back inside of the game because they're trying to rid themselves of him. And once they get inside, they realize that he has complete control of the area of the arena. So I really plugged in like he was almost like Freddy Krueger in these scenes where he's almost like they were in like a Freddy dream, where every time they'd go in, it was this like new nightmare. And there was a couple of them that are in the book that are not in the screenplay because I didn't have the space for them, and also they would be very pricey to make on film, just because of the nature of what they were.
Right, VFX and what have you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, not giving away the ending. Have you left yourself open to continuing the story, like a series or a franchise?
You know, 100%. I will say that.
Of
Yeah,
course.
it was written as a standalone, and it probably will stay that way. But it's definitely open for more if I wanted to. I actually had 2 sequels planned for This Land of Monsters that are kind of up in the air right now. I'm not too sure what I'm going to do with those at the moment, but there was other things that I wanted to work on, so I kind of put those on the back burner.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, you said you're also pitching this to several contests and stuff. How has it been doing? I guess which contests and how's it been doing, and what kind of feedback have you been getting?
I think it's been good so far. I was just looking at them yesterday. I think I've entered into maybe 8 to 10 of them, and I've placed in 4.
That's good.
Quarterfinal twice, semifinal. I got an honorable mention in the last one I was in the Southern California screenplay competition. So it's for a first time screenwriter. I'm happy where it's at. I'm kind of looking at other avenues to see like, okay, what can I do outside of just screenplay competitions to get some notice on this, because I also know that only having one screenplay makes it a lot harder to sell or to advance something. That's my understanding, anyways.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's usually the common thought is at least
Hmm.
have 3 of the same genre in your pocket, so if they go, "What else you got?" You're not like a one-trick pony, so
Yeah,
but you also have 118 pages, so you could be like, "I have a two-parter."
that's
It's a
true.
trilogy.
I can add the other 15 pages back.
Yeah, you would probably have a whole trilogy right
That's right,
there,
exactly.
and the prequel, so there you go.
Yeah.
So, I understand now you're pivoting from horror eventually to genre, your upcoming projects are in a different genre altogether.
Both the things I'm working on right now are actually different genres. The other screenplay I'm working on is a television pilot about it's a comedy. It's a dramedy with heavy comedy elements about a DJ that he's kind of on his way up in society, like he's getting a lot of fame, and he does something to completely ruin it. So he's kind of like a pariah in society. So he moves back to his home town of in Florida, and he ends up running a little beachside resort that's been in his family for years. And then the other one that I'm working on is I haven't quite. I'm still in the plotting phases, but it's a novel and it's a drama for sure. And I've always loved drama. I mean, even though I started in horror, drama is kind of what I've always loved.
So I know you did a book trailer for some of your horror novels. Have you thought about doing a sizzle for your script? And what was it like shooting a book trailer? I know that's kind of like an in thing in the book world, but like it hasn't really bled over into entertainment where we're like, hey, we're filming a book trailer. It's very rare that I see them.
I loved it. I mean,
Mhm.
my growing up, I wanted to work in film. It's funny, I started in fiction writing, but I always wanted to work in film. So back before This Land of Monsters released, I was with a small press, and even with bigger presses, a lot of the marketing does fall on you. And with a smaller press, it's almost exclusively like you do most of the marketing. So I figured, you know what, let's make a horror novel or a horror what do you call it, a book trailer. So I just got a couple of my friends and my brother-in-law, and I said, you know what, if you guys help me out for a couple hours, I'll take you out to dinner. And that's all it was. I went out and I found a nice road that kind of looked abandoned and zombie-ish, and that was it. I just filmed it on my iPhone. There's things about it that drive me crazy when I watch it now. Like there's a scene where I was filming with my camera. I was laying on the ground and kind of shooting upwards, and you can see the phone moving up and down from my breathing. It's
That's
just little
awesome.
stuff like that drives me nuts. But yeah, I had considered doing one for the 18th, but it was a little bit more involved with the 18th, and I figured it probably wasn't necessary.
So you can add director and producer to your list of talents.
Yeah, technically speaking, yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, you're already there. That's how they get started. That's how they pull you in. So what else do you have planned for the future? And if people want to find you, where can they find you?
As of right now, I'm just writing, starting to write again. I do a lot of conventions when it's not coronavirus. I was doing a lot of conventions in the U.S. I did Cleveland, Atlanta, Chicago, kind of wherever seems like a good fit. Um, Other than that, online, I'm on Facebook, most active on Instagram, Twitter. But for right now, it's sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I thought didn't you mention or off podcast? You mentioned you were working on possibly starting a podcast too.
Yes, I was actually, and it's a big passion project of mine. I've always wanted to do it. I have a co-host. Her name's Heather, but I just felt I was pulled in too many directions at the time when I was planning it, and I had a couple other projects that were really pulling my attention away, so I made the decision to just kind of put it on the back burner. But it's called the Histories and Mysteries podcast. It's going to be about like hometown folklore, like things that you don't hear. Like typically, you're not going to hear about Bigfoot and the Jersey Devil on our show. It'll be stuff that you really would only hear about if you grew up in that town. So stuff every time you tune in, it would be like a brand new kind of piece of lore that you've never heard of.
Cool. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so if you want to check out Tim's work, This Land of Monsters and the 18th are both available on Amazon.com. We'll put a link in the show notes. If you've got Kindle, what is it called? That Kindle Unlimited, they're free. So you can listen, give them a read. We'll hope to see more from you in the future. Hopefully see your films coming out. We'll see you next time, everybody.